Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Michelle here from happiest.her.com. In this week's Compassionate Chat, I'm back to talking about narcissism because it is such an important piece of being your happiest, healthiest self. You can't be your best if someone is manipulating you or taking from you. So this is part one of the discussion because it's such a meaty topic. And so this week we're talking about why you can't spot manipulators and narcissists, and it's not necessarily what you think. We're going to cover one main truth and then 6 things that could be impacting your ability to do this. In the next video, I will talk about what makes us a narcissist magnet. I will release that in a couple of days, so please subscribe if that interests you. To begin, the universe has a really funny way of directing us to what we need to know. So if you found this, you probably need it just like I needed it. One of the first rules of thumb is to pay attention to what is happening around you. We get messages to tell us something is off, and every time I declare that I am free from narcissists, it seems like someone new shows up to test me. It's very humbling, and humility is really a crucial piece of healing from narcissistic abuse. We must realize that we are part of the equation. We are unfortunately doing something that is attracting and keeping manipulators around. So my message came at the beginning of this year. I was watching a podcast that was on nothing to do with narcissism. It was on personal growth. And then the next podcast in the series just happened to be with Sandra L. Brown, who she is an expert and the author of Women Who Love Psychopaths. So there is overlap between psychopathy, sociopathy, and narcissism. They're all on spectrums, and they are all typically use manipulation. It's not important for us to be able to diagnose people. It's just important that we recognize the manipulation. Okay, so what Sandra shared is that the bottom line is that with manipulators, they are sicker than we are smart. So you can know all the knowledge in the world, but you have to understand that the knowledge can't necessarily keep us out of these interactions, okay? A predator is a predator, and they will come after their prey in any way that they can. So I mentioned previously that I've watched countless videos on narcissism. I really immersed myself in the subject because I wanted to help heal myself and then spread the information to others. So I spent all of last year writing a book and a course called Free from Narcissists, a 10-step program to reclaim your joy. And I am really, really proud of that work. I feel like it is comprehensive and it has a lot of supportive tools. It's all the things that I used to help heal myself and shift my energy out of the state that was causing me the harm of the narcissistic abuse. And in that course, I actually go into tons of red flags and even 29 different tactics that narcissistic people tend to use. And still, what I realized recently is that I had narcissistic people manipulating me the entire time I was working on the course. And I didn't notice it. And now I see it so clearly, I'm absolutely stunned. So coming to that realization obviously devastated me and made me angry at myself until I reflected on what Sandra L. Brown had said. And she's one of many experts, actually. Dr. Ramani, who I absolutely love, also says the same thing. It is incredibly common that very knowledgeable people, including trained therapists, get tricked by manipulators. So we really have to understand that this isn't just about knowledge. It isn't just an intellectual capacity that's going to keep us out of this. So why does this happen? in part 2 of this topic, I will go much more deeply into what makes us attractive to narcissistic people, what in essence makes us a narcissist magnet. But for now, following are 6 things that can trick us in terms of identifying behavior. The first thing is that you continue to see all people as mostly good or kind, and you are actually looking for the good in them. So we actually talked about this topic before in the Dangers of Gratitude video, which I will link to below. But I recently realized that what Dr. Ramani actually says is that a good 20% of people are considered to potentially be narcissistic. And I hope I'm not misquoting that, but really 20% is 1 in 5 people. That's a lot of people. It's highly, highly unlikely that you're not engaging with narcissistic people on a regular basis, simply because they do very well exist. And if you have a very open mind, a very optimistic perspective, you're going to potentially overlook that fact. So you really have to be able to see the dark side of humanity and recognize that there are people out there looking to harm us. That's the only way to fully protect yourself, is to have that awareness. The second thing that could be blinding you is that you have been love bombed strategically. Love bombing is basically when someone tells you everything you ever wanted to hear. They give you fantastic compliments. And as I mentioned in the video on the one thing we all need, is that humans need validation. So manipulators know this. They operate on that piece of human nature that you need to be validated. You need someone to see you and mirror back your goodness, your kindness, whatever it is that you may have felt like is lacking in you. A manipulator will sweep in and give you that information and make you feel better about yourself. And it's absolutely intoxicating. It doesn't matter how much you're trying to stay outside your ego. It's still going to potentially impact you, especially if you have been around narcissistic people who have been emotionally abusing you and telling you you're no good, you're not good enough, you're not a nice person, or you're not a kind person, or you're not even an intelligent person. If you've been told insulting, highly critical things, and then someone sweeps in and tells you the opposite, it feels so amazing that it'll be hard to spot that perhaps that person is also manipulating you. So the third thing is that you might be too close to the situation. This is incredibly common for a lot of us. This is especially true if you actually live with your manipulator, if you are partnered up with someone who is narcissistic. You're literally immersed in their negative taking energy. And if you happen to be highly sensitive or what we call an empath, they're literally draining you. They're draining your energy source, they're depleting you, and making it very hard for them to see that they are the problem, that you're kind of in this soup and it's very, very hard to get out of. The same can even be true in a work environment. You're going every day, especially if you're going into an office, you're going in every day and people are potentially draining you and manipulating you, and it can become very cloudy. So in that kind of situation, you need to really look to your friends. You need to consult with people who know you well and say, hey, here's this scenario. This is what's happening. What do y'all think? Is this, does this sound unhealthy to you? Does this sound strange to you? And your friends are going to tell you. My bestie is who finally got me out of my most narcissistic relationship. She finally said to me, girl, this is not okay. And I was too close to it to see it. But her as an outsider was able to literally pull me out and let me see it. A coach can be very helpful in this as well, especially if they understand narcissism and narcissistic abuse. Therapists can be great, but sometimes therapists do not know the energy of narcissism. And I have had therapists who have not recognized that energy around me and actually were looking to label me as more of having a disordered reaction rather than realizing that I was surrounded by people who were causing me to be in that space. And that's really dangerous. You don't want to have someone misreading you and trying to diagnose you when you're not really the problem, and the people you are around are the ones who are actually causing you the harm. The other thing you can do at this point is to actively journal. By keeping a record of someone's behavior patterns, the things that they say, the things that they do, how you're feeling about it, which is the most important piece, is how you're feeling about it. And then what you can do is historically go back and say, oh my gosh, well, this is a pattern. I had a really strange experience where I was in a job and I kept journaling about things that were happening in this job. And I kept saying I would journal the thing, and then I would actually say, well, I don't think they meant it, or I don't think they really had control, or I don't think I should really I think I maybe are overthinking this. Well, after going back and reading that same thing over and over and over again, like probably 6 or 7 times, I finally had to say, okay, wait a minute, you are seeing this clearly, and you need to pull yourself out of it. So the fourth thing is that your relationship is mostly texting or surface. Now, this can be very common these days. We often, because we're so busy, we get into relationships that are really like digitally based, meaning like you're on social media platforms and you're talking to people in that capacity, or you're on your cell phone. You're not around them a lot physically. And it can be really hard to read energy and detect tone and fully grasp someone's behavior through a digital device. As some of my followers might know, I wrote the book Online Dating for Sensitive Women, and I wrote it because I felt like the online dating world was sort of a landmine of a lot of people who are narcissistic and manipulative, and especially they targeted sensitive people, or at least we were more likely to fall for them. And one of the things I've noticed and I've seen in situations with in forums I'm in is people end up in long distance relationships with someone where they're just text based, and they fall in love with the person. They are actually falling in love with the persona that the person is projecting, which is really unfortunate, because then they meet the person and the person is not who they said they were. This happened to me several times. After a while, what I realized is I would have to, I wanted to meet someone quickly. I didn't want to get into weeks and weeks of texting, because what I found would happen to me is I'd start to fall for the person before I even really knew them. And then I'd meet them and I'd be like, I'm not sure about this person, but I already had it in my head that I was like really falling for them. So this can be dangerous. This happens with friendships too. People can look so sweet and so kind. They send you a lot of cute, funny memes, and you think, oh my gosh, this person has the same sense of humor as me. This person is just like me. And then you have to sadly realize, after maybe being in their physical presence, that they are not like you. So try to get some depth in your relationships. Try to make sure that you're meeting people in person so that you really get to know them. So the fifth point goes right along with that, and that is that people only show their true nature over time. So this is important, that before you get fully invested in someone and fully trusting them, is that you have longevity. You have to really have, months of knowing a person and seeing that their behavior maybe matches their words. You have to be able to track that. It's dangerous to trust someone right out of the gate or get too close to someone quickly, because that is often a manipulative situation. You have to realize that manipulators are super charismatic. They will pull us in. They will make us think that they're the best friend, the best partner, the best person we've ever met, when really they're not exactly who they're portraying themselves to be. So the sixth thing that really trips up a lot of people, especially people who are compassionate, spiritual, or empathetic, is that you do see their negative traits, or more likely, you feel them in your body and in your intuition. It'll feel like, oh my God, I feel sick to my stomach, or like my belly is tense. That's usually what I would refer to as my solar plexus is telling me this person isn't really safe. I might feel like a constriction in my chest. It's like your body is trying to protect you, but then you talk yourself out of it. You'll say, oh, no, you're just being too judgmental. Stop doing that. Or, no, give them a chance. And so that's that's what a lot of us have been taught, right? Is don't judge people, give people passes. And that actually is incredibly dangerous programming. We should not be giving people multiple passes to harm us. You really should only need one or two, because most people don't harm other people. They wouldn't do it more than once. And if they did, they might apologize for it. The other thing we tend to do along those same lines is that we commit to helping the person or fixing them. So we see that there's some real negative energy there, but we say, oh, I'm just going to give them a whole bunch of my love and my light, and I'm going to help them and support them. And what ultimately always happens is you get sucked into this vortex of negativity, and this person will ultimately harm you. Really, really unhealthy. And it's really that they're utilizing your best traits to pull you in to their sort of manipulation spiral. It's really important to remember that kind, compassionate people are consistent. They're never intentionally cruel. And if they do hurt you in some way, they're willing to apologize. They take responsibility for their part of the relationship, just as you're going to take responsibility for yours. If you find that you're constantly the only one apologizing, you're the only one committed to like having conversation about things, then that's probably not a healthy relationship. And you deserve to be in a healthy relationship. So I think it's important too to note that many people these days like to say, oh, everyone is a narcissist. And that, I do believe, is one of the bigger red flags of someone who is hiding behind their narcissistic behavior. Because no, thankfully, not everyone is a narcissist. So I mentioned that stat, 1 out of 5. That means 4 out of 5 people are not narcissistic. Thank goddess. There are safe people. There are people who have genuine empathy and are not trying to get other people to do things for them, or are not emotionally abusing others. Look to those people. Stay away from the people that are harming you, or the people who are dismissing your perspective and assuming that everyone's narcissistic, because really that isn't reality. Of course, it will say everyone has the potential to be narcissistic. It's a personality trait, but it is way more than a trait. When we're talking about a manipulator, truly narcissistic people are manipulate as a way of life. That's how they live. It is a means for them to use and abuse others. It should not be dismissed or validated as being normal or acceptable, because it isn't. It's harmful and it's predatory. I will say people do overuse the term narcissists or even narcissistic to mean arrogant. And those are actually completely different things with different motivations. So arrogance is a subset of narcissism, but someone who just brags a lot is annoying, but they're not necessarily manipulative or bullying. Typically what we see with someone who brags a lot is they have some insecurities. They're trying to boost their confidence. They're trying to work it out in the world, but they're not necessarily using that to harm another person. So we don't, of course, want to label everyone, but we do recognize that patterns of behavior do exist and they can be really harmful, and you need to be able to protect yourself. You're allowed to protect yourself and choose healthy, nurturing relationships. So the main reason I wanted to do this video is that if you have been duped or manipulated by these types of people, I want you to know you are in really good company. The most compassionate, loving, positive, supportive, empathetic, and even highly intelligent people are the ones who are falling for this cruelty. So please don't beat yourself up. They took advantage of your best traits. That is on them, not you. As soon as you detect that someone is manipulating you, you just move on and forgive yourself. You don't have to forgive them. You don't have to forgive someone who has hurt you. Now, of course, forgiveness helps to release a lot of the dark, heavy energy, but you don't have to do that if you're feeling really, really upset. You're justified in feeling upset. You might want to look at the Power of Anger video, because there is a point where the anger is helping to give you fuel to protect yourself from future abuse and from leaving a relationship in which you have been abused. So while you do not have to forgive others, you do have to forgive yourself, because not forgiving yourself is a form of shame and guilt and self-abuse. I don't want that for you. That'll bring you down. That's going to make you feel terrible. So please, if this has happened to you, know that you are not alone, and you can heal from this. I know that your life can feel better and be better if you give yourself forgiveness and you understand that it is not your fault that you have been manipulated. Okay, so I hope this helps. If you're interested in part 2, as I mentioned, please go ahead and subscribe, and I'll be back in probably a couple days to share that video on what can potentially make someone a narcissist magnet. As always, I wish you good health and happiness, and I thank you for being with me.